saying that the United States might be willing to walk away from peace talks if a deal can't get done soon. We had J.D. Vance yesterday, sort of while overseas, spelling out, and we'll get into the details in a moment, but conditions for a ceasefire, for peace, which would involve Ukraine giving up Crimea. And that's the sticking point right now. This is the Ukrainians are simply not going to recognize Russian territory. Now, there's going to be dispute over it. There's certainly been sense, even while President Biden was in office, whether Ukraine really had the ability to retake Crimea. But that is simply not going to be, you don't start the negotiations there. And that's where the Trump team seems to want, which is such a huge concession from Zelensky, also having to say we'll never join NATO while asking nothing of Russia, continuing to fawn in many ways, as Witkoff has done, over Vladimir Putin, siding with Moscow day in, day out in this conflict.
And Lemire, as you mentioned, while traveling in India yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance repeated the administration's warning about the U.S. walking away from negotiations between Russia and Ukraine if a deal isn't reached soon.
Well, I'm going to echo something Secretary Rubio said, which is, look, we've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process. We've engaged in an extraordinary amount of diplomacy, of on-the-ground work. We've really tried to understand things from the perspective of both the Ukrainians and the Russians. What do Ukrainians care the most about? What do the Russians care the most about? And I think that we've put together a very fair proposal.
All right, and before we get to our experts, tell me what you're thinking right now.
Even as the vice president said there, he said we're trying to understand each side's perspective. Trying to understand the Russia's perspective. We know what their perspective is. They invaded a sovereign nation.
They want to seize territory, and Trump wants to give it to them.
Yeah,
that is the bottom line.
Doesn't seem much up for interpretation.
The Wall Street Journal editorial board has a new piece entitled "Trump's Ukraine Ultimatum." It reads in part, quote, "Mr. Trump's current offer looks more like an ultimatum than grounds for a durable peace. Mr. Trump is angry that Ukraine won't accept a deal that legitimizes Russia's occupation of Crimea, as if this is a minor map revision. The U.S. refusal to credit territory seized by invasion is a principle intended to deter future marauders. Letting Russia keep its navy in Crimea is a threat to Europe as much as to Ukraine. A peace or even an armistice worth the name requires compromise on both sides. But Mr. Trump has applied pressure only on Ukraine. Mr. Trump likes to say Ukraine doesn't have the cards, but it does have one ace. The president won't be able to abandon Ukraine without paying a heavy political price. Mr. Trump can still salvage a deal in Ukraine, but the current final settlement offer looks like it would set up Mr. Putin to win the war now or later. The world's rogues will notice, and Mr. Trump's headaches will have only begun. Willie.
The New York Times reminds us this morning that now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, then Senator Rubio, just 3 years ago, co-sponsored legislation, an amendment to prohibit the United States from ever recognizing any Russian claim over parts of Ukraine that has